Hello, this is an assessment for restoration of a Bechstein Model 4 upright piano, 119 centimetres tall, that's 3 foot 11. First of all, looking at the casework, it's ebonised black, and in the condition is, in terms of the veneer missing, there's not too much veneer missing, but it's quite bumped and scratched really, but could either be made good, which is possible, and or it can be fully repolished. Obviously that's a lot more expensive. Let's have a look round it, and if this was a piano that was in stock, well, we wouldn't repolish it. It's difficult to get the money back on that. We would try to tidy it up, I think, so that would be what I'd recommend. Although it would be nice to repolish if there's enough funds to go for that. Then you can see that used to have the candlesticks on here. They've been taken off. Candelabra is what we call them. Sconces, actually, sorry. There's the name Bechstein Berlin. Again, you can see the marks on where finger marks behind the keys. It's quite common. Looking at the keys, they've been played quite a lot. You can see the sides of the blacks have worn. That's very common as well. That's an indicator of how much it's been played. The ivory keys are very, very good condition. They need buffing. They're dull and they'll attract the dirt if they're not buffed. There are different levels. It implies that probably this moth has got underneath and eaten some of the felts. We'll have a look at that in a minute. There's one or two here. That can be improved. You'd have to redo all the sharps if you're going to do much more than just trying to improve that. And sometimes difficult to know where to start with the work, because obviously it's expensive if you do all of this. There's a little bit of veneer chip down there, the bottom. And the pedals indicate where the right-hand pedal is obviously shinier than the left, which is one that's used most, and there's a slight dip on it. Indicates a reasonable amount of wear. That's actually metal worn on there, so that is a lot of wear. But it's very, very common, especially on good quality pianos like Bechstein's. And the back of the piano covered in gauze, which is commonly done, and that's got a hole down the bottom there. So obviously you don't see the back, but it could be refinished if you wanted it to be. Now, the main reason for assessing this piano is that it doesn't stay in tune. The tuning pins are not tight. They could well be originals. This is slightly loose on here. I've said it many times before, this Bechstein original tuning pins and a lot of other makes are quite small. So this medium star fits but wobbles around. It's possibly original. I think it is. I've checked on another Bechstein for the size of the pins just because I was unsure. But the strings look like original Bechsteins too. Let's listen to the problem. Oh, so there's one bad one. That's a tuning pin here, I think, and it's loose. If you try and pull it up, it easily goes back down again. So that needs replacing. Now, normally, if it wasn't a Model 4, if it was its successor is a Model 9, which has got a 9 on it, by the way, here. Model 4 doesn't have a 4 on it, as far as I know. And the successor, Model 9, which starts in 1902, doesn't have this problem. But if you replace the pins on here, from experience, we've often had pianos in that have been fully restored, but the tuning pins still go loose, even though they're bigger pins and longer ones sometimes. But the Wrest Plank is at fault. So we've replaced many Wrest Planks on Model 4 and 5 mainly, the older models, before 1902. Remember that date as when the Model 4 becomes the Model 9. Same height piano, the shortest of the Bechstein uprights. So we're going to have to change them. But let's listen to the tone. Now that's good. It's replacing the strings will improve it slightly as well. They're going to be out of tune there, so loose pins again. You can see that some of the pins have been knocked in a bit here too, which is another indicator. They're not as far out as this one, for instance. So that was the tuner having problems with. There may have even been liquid put on it here at some stage to try and tighten them up. But in the end of the day, you have to replace the tuning. The Wrest Plank, that's the wood behind here, and it's fine with a modern Wrest Plank with multi-laminate. It'll be fine for many, many, many years, as good as a new piano basically in terms of the tuning block. I'm listening to the tone here. Very often there's a variation of tone here on Bechstein Model 4s, and it is a slight variation, but it's not too bad. The hammers have been worn. We saw the pedals of wear on there, and the hammers have been worn. Original hammers, definitely. They would be refaced. I mean, replacing them is very expensive, but so if it's a stock piano, I think we wouldn't replace those hammers. We checked that they were tight, by the way, and they do seem to be quite tight because they start to go loose. That's very encouraging. So it's got some positive factors here. Looking at the bottom of the action here, the tapes are starting to wear, which is normal. So they need replacing, I would recommend anyway. One of them has been replaced here. So we would replace them with good quality tapes. This, by the way, has an extra spring mentioned in other videos. I won't dwell on it too much because this video will be too long otherwise. But so the tightness of the keys is not too bad. So the cricket bats, I think it's been regulated before as well, because this wouldn't be tight up as it is now. Normally they'd be slack, so this part moves before that part. So that's been regulated at some stage, and doesn't have a tide action, which is encouraging. The Model 5 has a tide action, yes, and I think all of them do, and this is a capstan action, which is easier to work on. So there's lots of positive things, and the break point, that's very out of tune, not too bad. So I think restoring this piano is worth doing. It has a very sweet sound. This is why so many of there are a reasonable number of Model 4 and 5 Bechsteins around, and I think we've replaced about 10 tuning blocks so far on these, so it's a very common thing to have to do. I could fully restore and change everything on the piano, of course, but I think more than likely we would recommend just doing the tuning block and other works like tapes. Graphiting, I didn't mention, that gets done automatically when we do tapes anyway. The damping, they're coming off roughly well, not quite the same time, so that needs tidying up, but they're not too bad. It's obviously been regulated by somebody. There's lots of positive things. These have been eaten by moth, I would suggest, because looks like moth has got into other parts. Fortunately, these haven't been eaten, and the dampers have just been nibbled at. Sorry, it's a bit dark there. Maybe you can see the white on the dampers there, but they're still working well. So they can be replaced if your cosmetics are important to you, but it won't be better damping, I don't think. Both the felts and the springs are quite tight. We'd obviously check all of those to make sure that they were damping well, but that's not damping so well. But that's because it doesn't have the fly damper on that string, and it could do with one, but putting a fly damper on is a long job. Anyway, anything can be done, obviously. It's a question of what the budget is. We'll just have a look at the felt under the keys as well. Before looking at the felt under the keys, just want to look at what style, whether it's been restrung or not, I beg your pardon. And I've looked at another Bechstein of similar age, and same colour on that Bechstein. It's a bit unusual, you see. So you've got a darker blue there, you've got a lighter blue there, and you've got red here, which is red hitch pin washers, which is exactly the same one on a 1909 Bechstein that we have. So I would say everything points towards these being original, and the style and the way they've done the strings as well. Remarkable, isn't it, that bass strings carry on for so long and none of them are broken, which is very encouraging. None of the treble ones are broken. So you could theoretically keep the strings, but if you're going to change the tuning block, then it doesn't make sense really. You might as well put new strings on at the same time. I meant to mention that it's got the shop label on here. I'm not sure that that's the original shop, 37 Paradise Street, Birmingham. Just interesting though, and if we refinish the piano black, we could potentially retain that label. Just taking a few of the keys off reveals the extent of moth damage, which is very extensive. There's hardly any felt left there at all. They've munched all of that. And the front, this is the one that causes the key not to be level. Yeah, they've eaten that one. Well, they haven't. This one here, I think, is completely eaten, or almost completely eaten. So once they're eaten off, the keys aren't level anymore. And the back touch has also been eaten. So all of the felt underneath the key, underneath the keys on the key bed, needs replacing. The soundboard on the piano is extremely good condition. If we were to restring, we'd repair the soundboard at the same time, but it doesn't appear to need any repairs, which is unusual. There's no cracks showing. The cracks don't necessarily diminish the tone, but they're not very nice cosmetically to have cracks on your soundboard. So that's an assessment for restoration of a Bechstein Model 4 upright piano. It's the shortest of the Bechsteins, 3 foot 11 inches long, 119 centimetres. And just to look first, well, the most essential jobs that need doing. Now, the common job on this piano which needs doing on Bechstein 4 and 5, we've done many of, is replacing the Wrest Plank, because it won't stay in tune, the tuning pins slip. So that's the solution, and it makes it just like a new piano then. And in fact, every aspect of the piano can be made like a new piano. I mentioned this before, but key weighting, which is so important for musicians, they'll often choose a new piano or get rid of the old one because the key weighting is too light. In this case it's 47 grams on that one, which is fine, but on this one it's about 52 grams approximately. So obviously we can reweight those, and we would normally do it for our own pianos, so if it's a Bechstein. Now, it's not essential in terms of the piano working, but obviously the more work we do, the more refined, and we can get it just like a new piano. No reason why we shouldn't. So if you've got an older piano, don't think you've necessarily got to change it because of the key weight. That's something that can be done. If it's going out of tune, the Wrest Plank might need changing. That's unusual, but very, very common on Bechstein Model 4 and 5, which is pre-1902 basically. It's 1896. The keys are showing that it's had moth, as we mentioned earlier, and so the two essential jobs will be replacing the Wrest Plank and replacing the felt where it's been eaten, and just obviously checking that, treating it for moth just in case there's still moth there. Well, it probably isn't, but just in case we do that. Now, the tone of the piano is typical Bechstein, beautiful, but the hammers are the next job. They're too thin. Sorry, I beg your pardon. There's too much hammer hitting the string, as it were, too much of an area. I didn't really show that earlier, but I've shown that on other videos. So it's making the harmonics are not coming out clearly, and also it's too soft. So if it's refaced, that will certainly give it another 30 years of life. This has been used quite a lot. That certainly indicates a lot of use over a period of time, as you often get with Bechsteins because they're good pianos. And the action's not performing properly at the moment as well. So many things. If it was our stock piano, we would do an awful lot of work to it. Everything to make it as good as a modern piano. So I hope that's been helpful. Obviously, if we're doing an assessment for a client, we'll write all the details in an email with prices. I didn't mention the casework. Well, that can be refinished. Again, it's obviously adding a lot to the piano. We could spend a couple of days, maybe 3 days, tidying it up, but obviously you're still going to see not imperfect. It'd be nice to keep the label on here, which was the original piano maker. So I hope that's been helpful, and I'll try and, if you're interested in having your piano restored, please leave comments or write to us, info@robertspianos.com, and we'll see if we can help. But there's many Bechsteins in the country, many of this age. Probably 30% of Bechstein uprights would be before 1902, so there's plenty that need this kind of work doing, and they get rejected and sometimes almost thrown away because it's not realised that you can make very, very good pianos out of them, and with a tone that to me surpasses a new piano tone once it's finished. Thank you very much for listening.